Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of the Noiseblast Hour, sponsored by Noise Engineering. If you feel like something's a little bit different in this very special episode, you're correct. I'm not Sean. I'm Kris from Noise Engineering, and I'm happy to be here to guest host this episode, which is a takeover by the SoCal Synth Society, doing the last episode of Frequency Shift, which has been, if you've been paying attention, a takeover of a variety of different platforms throughout the month of August, showcasing a whole load of female and non-binary artists. And it's been an incredible month. So we are honored here at the Noiseblast to be the end of this series to really wrap it up. And so for this very special episode, we have two performers. We're going to start off with Holly Burden, and then we will, as per usual, interview Holly, and then we'll have a performance by Trovarsi, one of the co-founders of the SoCal Synth Society, and then we'll interview Trovarsi. And then after that, we'll bring in Space Racer, who is another one of the co-founders of the SoCal Synth Society, and we'll interview the two of them about the society, about frequency shift, and about what they had hoped to accomplish, what they did accomplish in this entire month. So stick around, it's going to be a really great episode. We're here with Holly Vernon. Holly,
Hi.
that was really a great set. I really enjoyed it. I loved how dark it was. I felt like there was this big tension between the light and the dark through the entire set.
Yes.
It was so, I don't know, it was just very intense, and I loved it. And
yes, that is the intention.
Like you were saying,
that intensity.
We've been friends for a long time, but we've never really talked about your work. So I'm really excited to get to dive in and talk about your influences and what you're doing. But I always like to start this because we're going to get a ton of questions in the chat. Walk me through the patch. What were you doing?
Okay, it's probably like one of the simplest patches ever for Modular. I've got the skiff here, so I'm just going to bring it into view. It's a small setup, right? And just super simple. Some beats coming out of the sequencer here, voices here. We've got Manus, Basimilis, Pluck, and the Pico input, which to me is so much fun because it brings in all of the external, it levels up your impedance to Modular so you can bring in other interesting things. And then we go into some textural reverb, feedback, and time delay. That's really about it. In this one, I was using the Pico to bring in the this guy here, the Blackfly that I was bowing. I think the microphone was blocking.
It was.
So you couldn't see that. I had all intention of putting vocal in that, and then just got kind of carried away with it, and it never happened. But
you were bowing it with a drumstick?
Yeah. Yeah. I picked up that Blackfly a few years ago from Perfect Circuit, and Ryan over there sent me this email, and he's like, combined with the other things that I had bought, he was like, you purchased some of the strangest things that we sell here, and I'm really curious to see what you end up doing with it. And it's been a few years, but it's finally actually worked its way into something.
I loved it. Like it was when you started it, I had chills. It was such a cool sound, and I've never seen a set that was just so, I don't know, the way you worked it all together. I loved it.
Yeah. Thanks, Kris.
So tell us about your background and where you grew up. You moved around a bit.
Yeah, get a little taste of everything, right? So my family comes from Belize, but I grew up in South Florida. And then after I was done with school, started on adventures. I moved to a bunch of different states around the US, spent time in DC and Massachusetts and New York, California, back to Florida, whatnot, until I ended up in Europe for a while, and then Australia, and then back to the US. And now I'm hanging out in Central Texas, which is pretty fun. It's fun. I'm going to stick with fun. Yeah. From an artist perspective, right? Like everything that I create always comes from this beginning part of like, I have this vision in my head, and bear with me here because like I'm going to sound a little bit crazy, but whatever. But if you could imagine like this lower middle class suburban neighborhood and blaring like sun, just like blaring afternoon sun, and me walking down the street like in a residential area, just like too much black clothes and like my head down but my eyes forward, right? This is like what I envision when I start to create. And then I'm lifting my arms, and as I do, everything behind me bursts into flames, right? And then I'm just like so pleased with myself, and like there's this feeling of walking off into the void that may be trauma from growing up in Florida presenting itself. I'm not really, if anybody else grew up in Florida, like let me know if you feel the same way, where like this like vision of your suburban neighborhood like going up in flames brings you to a place artistically that
it may
is
just
joyful.
Be suburbia.
Maybe, but we can start a support group. So there's that. Does that have to do with like my background? Maybe. I'm not really sure.
You list a lot of influences on your music, and they seem quite disparate on paper, like Riot Grrrl and Fluxus and Macabre and Sci-Fi. And I was initially going to ask how they kind of meld in your brain, but I think you kind of just explained that.
It kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah,
it does. Like I can see how you'd say that, but I mean, our influences should be all very different, right? Like let's take a taste from every flavor we are fortunate to experience in our life, right? But how could we not be fascinated by sci-fi and the macabre? We're talking about things that are pushing us beyond our comfort zones, and like instilling fear, and like, doesn't that make you question like, why am I afraid of this? Or introducing alternate realities and infinite possibilities, like that kind of stuff is really exciting. But I think they all tie together more if you look at like how they push the mind to go beyond a little, just a little bit further from what we're taking from things, like not so it's like so face value. Like with Fluxus, the entire point of that, we're talking about artists who are creating without a concern for what the outcome is, right? So
do you want to talk a little bit about what Fluxus is, because maybe not everybody's familiar with it?
Stemming from like the Dadaism, where art was surreal, Fluxus is an art movement where the art was the process of creating art. And so it put us where we're questioning what is art, what is music, and for me, that's who gets to decide that, right? Like let's create without concern for like whether or not at the end of the road somebody's going to say like, yes, this is art. It's art if your intention is art, I think. Then Riot Grrrl, whew. Like that's a 3-hour show, Kris. You're going to get me into like how Riot Grrrl has affected or influenced like just me as a person. Thank goodness I feel so grateful for it. Coming up as a teenager in the early 90s, and the family that I grew up in, like we're very conservative in a way, like my parents were, and like more traditional, and there were so many ooh, like it makes me irritated to think about. Like the amount of gender programming that went into our upbringing was just like disturbing. And I remember discovering Riot Girl like a dirty little secret, you know what I mean? Like going out of the record store and seeing flyers for shows and be like, what is this? And like my mind being blown. It's the early 90s. The internet doesn't exist like it does now, you know? So like that started to plant a seed in my head. And I literally remember the day I was like 15 years old, and my uncle came to visit from Belize, and I was being a mopey little shit, and he wanted to know what was wrong. And I told him, like, I was angry because my dad wouldn't let me cut my hair. What? Like, I just had like long, like pretty little girl hair, and he wouldn't let me cut it. And he said to me, you can't cut your hair. A woman's beauty is in her hair. And I swear it wasn't like no more than a couple days later, I was in the bathroom with a pair of scissors. Like, I would rather be nothing than hair, you know, and that was it. And that was Riot Girl. It taught, and it continues to teach, like being fearless and speaking your truth and standing up and taking your place. If you want something, get it.
Did you make music before Modular then? Or
yes. Yes.
And I realized it was technically a yes or no question.
Yes. There were so many attempts, like as a child, right? Like when I was a little kid, I played cello for a couple of years. That didn't stick. You know, as a teenager, I tried to learn guitar a couple times. That didn't stick. And then like experimental sound projects came into the mix, and that's been there forever. But it was like around, I want to say 2013, where I came into possession of a little groove box. It was the Circuit from Novation. And for me, I was like, this is it. My time has come. I'm going to start a one-woman goth band. Like, I had found it, you know. But I could never get that thing to sound like it wasn't battery operated. Like, some people do really well with it. Like, we just never really clicked. But it started this avalanche of acquiring gear, you know, like every keyboard synth ever, and all of the gadgets and all of the effects boxes. And what do you know, now I have a guitar again. And then Ableton came into the picture, and it was just, you know, I had turned into one of those people that it would take me 3 hours to set up my gear. You know, like, I'm here for a 20-minute set. No, I never played live with all of that, but probably because it was just ridiculous, like how many things were on the desk in the studio. But it was still a similar sound. We still were listening to stuff that kind of has that avant-garde industrial vibe, you know, that harshness, that place of like me incinerating suburbia. But it was a few years ago, like around 2 years ago-ish, when I was in Los Angeles and had the good fortune of having Normandy Falls come into my life, and he helped me build out my first modular rig. And from then it's become like my main instrument.
Is there a single module you'd be lost without?
No.
Or instrument or anything that you lean on a whole lot?
The yes and no questions are the best ones. No. It makes it so easy. No, let us all learn to practice a little bit of non-attachment, right? Like, let go of fear. Let go of the idea that a specific instrument is what you need to make you an artist. Like, let go of any beliefs that have been programmed into your mind and just create.
What's your desert island album? What would you take with you?
Chris, I can't have any favorites. Like, I'm physically incapable of choosing favorites of any.
I was afraid it was going to go there. That's why I gave you this question in advance.
I know. I thought about this so hard. What would it be? And like, I so want to like ramble off like some like quintessentially cool like dark wave album or something like that. Like, I swear I have good taste in music, but there isn't a single piece of music where I'm like, if I could only listen to this, that's it. That's the one. If like, this to me is music. Jesus, like it's so hard. It's so hard. But I think I'd rather listen to the Desert Island, unless there was an album of songs that were about like how to build a boat to get off of an island. But okay. But for the just to answer your question, I'm not going to cop out of it. I'll actually answer your question.
That was a pretty amazing answer, though.
Is there one?
I don't know.
Is there one? I thought about this a lot. So maybe the best option is to choose something that really like embraces the vibe of being on this island. And I don't know if Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville is an album or if that's just a song, but I picked that one.
Okay.
And then I'm going to die like listening to that and eating hopefully fermented coconuts. So beautiful.
Final question for you. So your piece, which I loved, like I mentioned at the top that there was like just a real tension between the light and the dark throughout. Mm-hmm. Who won? The light or the dark?
Me. It's probably dark. It's probably dark. Like I'm sure you can tell from looking at me, my inner goth shines bright.
In your white rainbow sweatshirt.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's very clear.
Goth on the inside. Goth on the inside is spirit.
I feel you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for being part of this. This was absolutely incredible. I loved your set, and it was so much fun to have you on here. And I'm so glad that you were able to take part of this.
Me too. Kris, thank you so much for having me on here. This has been amazing. And if I can do like a 30-second PSA.
Yes, please.
Before we sign out. So this is for literally everybody that's watching this right now, whether it's live or later on. What they're doing here with frequency shift is so important, right? Like, so we need to make sure that we're all doing our part to support all of these people that are creating a platform for artists. Anybody that is feeling underrepresented, like this is tremendous that they were putting this together for us. And so do your part to support them. Algorithms are a real thing. So make sure you are subscribing, following, liking, and engaging with their content. If you don't know what to put in the comments, and just put some fire emojis or whatever. But, you know, somebody help me out here and put all of the links in the live chat or in the description or whatever it is, so that we know to follow and help support all of these great people. So it's SoCal Synth Society, that whiskey's kicking in. SoCal Synth Society, #1, Frequency Shift. Thank you so much for doing this. Colorado Modular, Beat People, Noise Engineering. Kris, help me out here. Who am I missing? Oh.
Modular World.
Don't cry, Jono. I almost forgot you. Don't cry. But we do love you. Thank you so much for supporting artists like this. But what's that?
I think there's one more, but I can't remember who. But we'll put the links in. We'll put
the links everybody in the chat and in the description, or whatever, for everybody to follow. But make sure you are supporting people that are supporting us in this amazing scene that we have. Kris, thank you.
Thank you, Holly.
This has been amazing. It's so great to see you.
Yeah, you
Thanks
too.
for letting me be a part of it.
Okay, so that was Trovarsi performing. Trovarsi, we are honored to have as one of the co-organizers of Frequency Shift, performing on the Noiseblast, sponsored by Noise Engineering, and also as our newest employee of Noise Engineering. We are so happy to have her. So, Trovarsi, you want to just walk us through the patch first?
Sure. Thanks for having me too.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be on board. Okay, so what I did was my main voice was the BIA, of course, 'cause I love that module. And I used the 1010 bitbox, the micro. And the idea, I guess, behind this was, what can I do with a more compact setup? Like if I wanted to throw this in my bag and kind of go. And so basically what I did was I have the main kit coming from the 1010, and on the other side, you can see that I have the zero control, and that's basically the main clock, actually. That's sending clock to everything. And so I have various samples that I have, and some from my pack, and I'm triggering them with the O control and with the mimetic digitalis. So it's just kind of varying from there. And then I have pitch coming out of the mimetic to the BIA, and that's where you're kind of getting those other rhythmic elements, going from a little bit of bass lines to some plucky things happening. And yeah, and I have the Erica Synths dual effects, which is doing a lot of the delays and little catching there with the grabbing the delay, which I love doing that. And then I'm also using the MIDI fighter twister. I think I said that right. But it's essentially a 16 knobs. So I mapped 8 of those to the filter parameters on the 1010. And so that's why I'm able to filter in some of the hats and the kick and kind of create that dynamic like a DJ set. Yeah. And then, oh, go ahead.
No.
Oh, no. And then I have like extra rhythmic elements happening with the Zularic to kind of add a little more flavor to the rhythms.
Very cool. Yeah. I liked, I loved the set. It started off like just the dynamic of the set was very, very awesome. It was just what I come to expect from your music. Just really, really great. I was curious. So the 1010 stuff is really compelling and really cool stuff. How do you use the 1010 stuff in your workflow? I'm kind of springing this question on you, but it's cool stuff, and I'm curious how you use it in your workflow.
Okay. Well, it's sort of a recent addition, so I've been having a lot of fun with it. Right now, well, like I said, in this setup, is I dropped in some of my own samples that I've created and other samples that I like. And I went from some of them I'm triggering, so they're like some drum hits. Other ones are actual like synth stabs, and then I'm able to I'm able to pitch sequence those. Sorry, I had to think about that. Pitch with the CV, and I'm actually doing that with the O control. So I'm able to get some melodic. I don't know. Time out for just a second. I had to think about that. How I'm saying that. Yes, so I'm using the CV parameters to control one of the samples on there, which is a synth stab. I'm able to use the volts per octave feature with that. And the MIDI, I like the fact that it has MIDI, and that's where I'm able to use a controller so I can control various parameters at once. I haven't had a chance to really sample into it yet, but that's my next thing I'm going to do with it.
So tell me a bit about your background. Like, where did you grow up? How did that influence your musical style?
Well, I grew up in the Midwest, so
in the house.
Yep. So I listened to a lot of Chicago house and a lot of techno then, and well, then we just called it dance music, you know. But yeah, so I grew up there in the 90s, going to raves, and you know, late 80s, early 90s is really when I started going out. And then, but yeah, like as soon as I found like house and house music, I immediately took hold of me, I should say, because I loved going out, and then I worked at a record shop too, so that helped a lot. So I was able to be exposed to a wide range of music, even death metal.
Did you always want to be a musician?
Yeah, I started playing the violin actually when I was in elementary school.
Oh,
And so
wow.
that was my first instrument. And then I started playing the piano, and then I stopped playing the violin, and I stuck with the piano, and I sang as well, and that kind of went into I've always been interested in music, even as a small child.
Very cool. So I know that you've been making music, as you just said, for a long time. What brought you into modular?
Ooh, so I have been intrigued, first of all, by playing live, and I would go to NAMM, and you were one of the first, you and Steven actually, which is such a great full circle. I always say like that my experience, my introductions to modular and the sounds, and I always like say like and remember that I remember the walkthrough. I don't remember what you you guys said or what Steven said to me at all. I just remember that sounds. I really like the sounds that you were able to create, and by turning knobs and just things that would take me forever to try to recreate in racks and Ableton, you know, because I did a lot of production inside the box as well. So between that and then what really like pushed it over was I went to see Belief Defect play live at I forget where it was, but you know, Lot 613, I think it was in Los Angeles. So and then I was like, that's it, because I really love cinematic elements and dark elements, and just I love those sounds and sound design in general, and just the idea of being able to put your hands on it. It's like, okay.
I've seen you perform where you were told mid-set that you had to suddenly improvise for 30 minutes longer than you originally were expecting to play.
Yeah.
Do you find that sort of, I guess constraint is not the right word, it's the opposite of constraint, that sort of requirement, that sort of thing easier with a particular setup? Is there a set of gear that you would find that sort of thing thrust upon you easier to work with?
Let's think about that for a second. It's definitely, well, I remember this set that you're talking about. And that was a little more difficult because I was also playing with Brian at the time. And so it didn't just involve me winging it. It involved him winging it, me winging it, and like us winging it together. The plus side was that when we started playing forward, we did all improvisation. And one thing I did learn from that is that it's good to have a backbone, I guess, is how I call it. Like, you know, no one wants to watch you program kicks, you know, or listen to that. They're there to like dance and whatever. So like having these sort of skeleton things, like maybe kicks or maybe a stripped down version of a bass or a lead or something that you can add and build on. In that case, I was using Ableton and I had a push, so I was able to kind of overdub and loop, and the push allows you to play in the key, and we would just pick a key and know that we're both playing in the same key. So you didn't really have to think about like how many sharps or flats. But I think as I've evolved more using modular, I would say even now it's easier for me to improvise by the way that I have my setup. And for me, it's about the modules that I pick. I would say like when I first started out, it was very, how do I say, like, I had a sequencer, I had modules, and a lot of them were one per function, like a hi-hat, clap, a clap. And now I choose modules that have a little bit more, that can do more. Like, for example, using the mimetic digitalis and the BIA, I can get a straight 4-4 kick, make some hi-hats, and add some other weird like thing on top of that with just those two modules. And
I swear I'm not paying her to plug our products.
No, but that's like the best example, because it's just, I feel like the more I've gotten into modular, the more it's allowed me to take a look at the modules I'm using to be able to have that fluidity.
Yeah.
So that has a lot to do with it too, I guess. Like if your setup is prepared for flexibility. Whereas I played with other setups where it's like I had like when I would play, for example, with my Digitech in my Digitone, I had some flexibility, but I couldn't, like the Digitone, if I used a lot, like some loops and didn't put exact trigger points, I was sort of stuck with that BPM. And so I learned very quickly that, what tools limited me in that way. You know what I mean? So like if I made a set and I made it at 131 BPM and they're like, oh, well, can you open, for example? Like a DJ, you can choose your BPM. It's much more flexible, So like if they were like, oh, well, can you play a slower? I couldn't do that, depending on how I wrote those patterns, because you know what I mean, because they were kind of written to that BPM. So it does have a lot to do with what type of gear what you pick could lock you into a certain situation.
Is there anything, instrument, module, program, hardware product that you feel like you couldn't live without, you couldn't perform without?
Well, it goes without saying my BIA, but I love my Metron sequencer. My Metron sequencer.
Nice.
I like it because it goes back to the performance.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's very visual, and I'm a very visual person, so that for me that works well. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So last question before we start talking about some of the SoCal synth stuff, I just want to ask, what would be if you're stuck on a desert island, what would be the album you'd want to take with you?
Ooh, I would have to say Times by David August.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, Trovarsi, thank you so much for your incredible performance. We'll be back in just a minute with Trovarsi and her co-founder of the SoCal Synth Society, Space Racer.
Mm-hmm.
And we are back with Space Racer and Trovarsi, two of the co-founders of the SoCal Synth Society. Try saying that fast.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the lovely humans that are behind this frequency shift extravaganza that we've been watching all month. And I know a lot of the people here today have been here for many, if not all, of the events that you two have put on. So let's just start off. Tell us a little bit about the SoCal Synth Society, what it is, what you do, why you started it.
You start. Well, the Southern California Synth Society, or SoCal for short, it's just, it's just a bunch of nerds at the fundamental level, a bunch of music nerds, and it started small, just a few of us meeting up and soldering and just exchanging modules and info, and just like, I think, really hungry for knowledge and for I guess networking in this community, because it was hard to I don't know. I mean, I think this was well before the quarantine, but it seems like it was harder to find people back then.
Yeah.
So, Shonda met up with Abe and
Your third co-founder.
Abe, yes, our other co-founder, and he had the same interests in this, like-minded thoughts, and so we just decided to go for it. And I think it was right after Moog Fest, maybe, or
I think it was maybe or right around there.
Yeah,
because the thing was, like, as we met, I was everywhere, as you said. Like, we were trying to go and like learn more about Modular and things like that, and there was Modular on the spot, but we couldn't find anything there where people were getting together and teaching or learning or something. It was like there was a lot of places where you could watch people play, but not really explaining what it is that they were doing. So we were really hungry, I guess, to find a community to learn stuff and share stuff with. And so when we met Abe and found out that Abe only lived like 15 minutes from me because I needed a cable.
I'll start over one cable.
Yeah. Yep. And that was it. We were like, hey, yeah, we should hang out, And it's like, oh, yeah. And then we just did. And it started off with a handful of people, and it just grew, like, very organically.
And it grew very quickly. I mean, as soon as we got the word out that, hey, we're going to have a meetup. And if you're into Modular or you want to be into it, or you've got questions, come over. And it started just in our, little, I guess, little tiny community that has now really expanded. And I would say it's almost global now. So it's been wonderful.
What sort of events are you putting on right now? Well, obviously not right now, but in general, what sort of events do you do?
We do meetups where we have jams and get together, and just people can bring their gear.
Soldering sessions with that. Sometimes we'll start off the day soldering, and then, if it's a small thing and we finish it that day, we'll jam with it. If not, we'll just jam with other stuff. Or
people be jamming while some people are soldering, and just to hang out. And then some events where we did at the Grand Park for LA, for example, that's like a larger event we did, it was more like we had noise engineering, we had electron, and we had various gear on the table. We just talked to people that came up and wanted to know about hardware or Modular, and just kind of let them have a hands-on experience. And we all came together and supported the booth for that. Other events we've had, for example, Chris Myers from Learning Modular, and like a book signing, and he did some patch walkthroughs and answered people's questions. And
that was a good one. And then we had some performances. We did a event for NAMM, and that was very fun. It just had a showcase of just all genres of electronic music. It was a great time. So.
When you started this, was diversity on your mind from the beginning? Given that Modular is typically known as being such a white male heavy sort of genre, for lack of a better word, were you looking to make a meetup group that was a diverse group, or was that on your mind at all, or was it just, let's just see who we get?
I think it was subconscious.
I think we're a diverse group anyway, sort of.
Right. So it's like,
in
we're
the community,
married, and I'm not white, and so we're,
I think it just evolved that way naturally, because that's part of who we are, is not just cis white men.
Right. So. Although we have a lot of cis white men members,
yes,
and
they're great too.
Yeah, but the idea is that everybody's equal,
and we're inclusive, and anyone can do this. It's not just like this thing like golf or something for some people. Not that anyone can't play if they want, but and it can start small, and it can become a bigger thing, or it can just be what you want it to.
So Frequency Shift has been amazing. It's been just huge. I've seen so much publicity around it, and people are so excited about it. And I'm so impressed and excited. I'm so excited to be a part of it. What made you decide to do it, and why did you think it was important specifically to showcase women and non-binary performance?
Well, it started because, well, I feel like me for sure. Most of the lineups that I play on, I'm the only woman. And then Space Racer, she saw a lineup in the community, and like it was like, oh, there's no women on this lineup, but there's a lot of women that are playing live, whether it's modular or hardware or whatever. Like, and so we talked about it, and we're like, we should do. It started with this question. I was like, it was more of
she posed a question
like,
to the community.
Are there only 20 women in modular? I was, being facetious because I know more than 20 women, but the idea was like, hey, like, come on, like
hit us up.
Like, yeah, hit us up. They're out there, like, and I just wanted to see, like, and it, sure enough, like, there's like tons of people just tagging tons of different artists, and artists tagging themselves, and just, I think that, it just kind of took off on its own then. Like, after that, we were like, oh, well, we need to do something now. And
we didn't know it was going to be such a big response. We just put a call out hoping to get like a handful more people doing music. And we followed now probably 200 female artists and non-binary artists. And obviously we're showcasing some of those that wanted to participate in Frequency Shift. And we will, that's been a successful series so far. So it's likely that we'll do these in the future, and maybe the format or another, but hopefully it grows into a really big thing.
I've seen pushback before from people who claim that, modular posts on social media are just, they're just hands. And so it doesn't really, you don't know who the person is. So it doesn't matter if it's male or female and whatever. The identity of the person is just unknown. So why does this representation matter? Why do you think that it's important to showcase women and non-binary people? I mean, it's kind of going off of what we just
said. Kris, come on.
Oh no, I know.
So, yes, that is true. In many videos, you just see the hands. And although even Trovarsi has gotten comments about her hands, even her hands.
Yeah.
But in these videos, I think that regardless of if you're seeing the hands or not, we also, you're hearing, a performance, and that's pretty much the culmination of what these people have been working on. And they're, a lot of people put their heart and soul into their music. And
for me, it was, sorry.
No, I was saying, so we want to know who these people are, not just their hands.
Yeah. And for me, it was like when I play, I've had experiences. I've had a lot of great experiences, interacting with people, whether musicians or not. But I've also had the experience of being dismissed, or being talked down to as though I don't know what I'm doing, or, or just they're not unaware of that I even make music, and so I don't know, like, I just felt like by doing this event, it will bring more awareness that there are a lot of women, non-binary, out there making music, playing and making awesome music. It's not, and that this is just not for, this specific, cis white male, there are everyone is out there making music and making great music, and it needed to be recognized.
And that's what I think it is. It's just like there hasn't been a great platform to recognize or to highlight all of these amazing people and their music. So, that's the greatest thing about this, is that you get to meet new people, hear their cool music, be inspired by that, and then create even a bigger community than we've already created out here. So
it's been amazing to watch. I'm so excited about it and so pleased that you're doing it. You know, it's been publicly stated that I was the person that ran Ladies of Modular, the Instagram, and I have essentially stopped at some point because I had a really hard time finding women that were posting. And I found at some point that I was posting the same 3 or 4 women who were amazing, but I was posting the same 3 or 4 women over and over again. So how do we encourage women to put themselves out there?
I think this is encouraging women to put themselves out there. So, I mean, and I guess since we've now been able to follow back, you know, everyone's followed SoCal on Instagram or Facebook, and now we've been able to follow them back, and wherever they are, and they're making this really interesting music and using just, you know, any different number of combinations of modules or hardware or stringed instruments with it. It's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was just going to say that for me thinking, by doing this event and incorporating other societies, it not only shows that that we want to create this environment, but B, there are other societies that want to participate and create and open their environment, and that they're open. So that's why it was important to not just do it on our platform. Like, we could have been like, oh, let's just do it on SoCal Synth Society, but that wasn't. It's more important because Modular World, they want to have, they are all inclusive. All Colorado, Modular Houston, Noiseblast, you know, like they want more artists. They want more female non-binary artists. Like, and
I think when you give them the opportunity, just you put the opportunity there and
show that they want to participate, that it's not just one society, because then it sort of, I feel like the wider the doors open, the more that people feel comfortable to come forward. Because when I made that post, I had people messaging me, and I could read on the thread, and it was just a very different dynamic versus, you know, the normal posts that, you know, when I post, I do have a lot of male friends, you know, and they make their posts all the straight fire emojis, shit like that, and I love it, you know, whatever. But then, like, some of the other posts were, oh, I don't know, is this considered modular? I hope this isn't dumb. And it's just a different way of thinking. For me, it's like, okay, well, we really do need to do it, because that's the kind of thinking that we need to shift. Yeah. You know, like, hey, if you can only use VCV rack or whatever right now because you maybe can't afford to buy $5,000 worth of modules, then hey, you're making music, you're doing it. And maybe when you do buy those modules, you won't be like, say, me, who spent a bunch of money on modules and realized, oh, I shouldn't have bought those modules. I should have bought this other one all along, you know? And so that's my journey, and that's that person's journey, and that makes it my journey no better than that person's process by going PCB to, you know, and that's just one way. And I had a lot of messages like that, like, oh, well, semi-modular, and it's just like, again, like, that's really the thinking that's important for me to really shift. It's like, if you're making music, and that's always been my philosophy, like, modular, hardware,
it's inclusive,
all of it, like, whatever.
Yeah. 2 responses to that. So one, Holly and I were talking earlier after her set about the programming that women go through, essentially, and how differently we tend to interact from men, and you're reinforcing it right there. Like, you know, the men will, yes, I have music, I modular, I this, I that, you know, and invariably, and this is what I ran into with Ladies Modular, it's what I ran into when I was teaching, it's, you know, when I was a biology professor, it's invariably women are less likely to be very forward about what they're doing and putting themselves out there, and they're more cautious
and wants to get shit on publicly, you know, for you know, putting their song out there or just putting a little jam. You know, people are cruel sometimes, and
and when we've done the Noiseblast in the past, we've tried very hard to always make it not just another show with 2 white dudes. And, you know, we've tried always to make it at least one person, at least somewhat diverse. And, it's been frustrating because we've had conversations where like, well, we could have woman A and woman B perform both on that day, but we have to be careful because we can't use up our women.
Yeah.
Which, it's a terrible way to say it, but,
I think that's going to be changing, We'll
I
go
hope
with
so.
some of these great women that we've
Yeah.
met.
Yeah.
I hope so.
There's been over 200, I believe. So,
Yay.
this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for doing this. Have you run into any challenges that surprised you in putting this together? Or has it been just smooth?
It was just, the surprise was the overwhelming response and feedback. And, we were worried about having enough platforms for all the people to perform that signed up.
Right.
So
and then we had to kind of
a good problem to have.
Like a day, we had to say like, okay, if you didn't submit by this day, like we had to kind of cut it off there. And then for this first edition, and then we still have people that filled out the form that when we do another edition, they'll be the first ones that we'll reach out to see if they still want to participate, which I hope they do, because we do want to do this. Maybe not to the high capacity of every weekend, but that was
we come out with a bang.
Yeah. Just to set that precedent, but we definitely want to do this on a regular basis, like at least one.
And I don't think there have been a lot of challenges other than technical challenges with this, all the societies have been so supportive. Mm-hmm. They've put in so much time and effort in, turning over their platforms and being behind the scenes while we broadcast our stuff on their platform. Mm-hmm. And
it does really take the whole community. And that was also the message of like, it does take it wasn't just us just because we're hosting like Colorado, they had to get the videos, Jono from Modular World, Houston, they had to put all those videos and get them together and they handle the back end, I guess, of the show. And it does take all of us to work together as a team, So yeah, and Abe and his awesome artwork, I had to give him a shout out.
Yeah. He does all our flyers for SoCal.
Yeah. But it does. It takes all of us,
So I guess there's still some people that think that, are I guess comfortable or complacent with the idea that this is just a dude's world. So how do we continue the frequency shift? Where do we go from here?
Well, keep filling out the form. We'll post it in our link again.
We'll put it down in the description.
Okay, great. And so keep filling out the form. So when we do another edition, we can have your information and follow SoCal Synth Society because we'll always post when we're going to be doing events. And that's like the main thing. It's just and follow other women and follow other performers. Follow them and. I think eventually, I know that there's been talks of doing some workshops and things like that, and that will also, I think, help open up conversations of other places to perform. I know that Modular World, they're always looking for more performers, Colorado, you guys, so I think.
So us all being linked now, I think that will really help. And you're looking for somebody, in a couple months. Hey, reach out to us, and maybe we just the person that would fit for your episode then, or
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Well, this has been an incredible month. I am so grateful to the two of you and everybody that helped for putting this together. This has been just really life-changing for a lot of us, I think. And I'm so glad that you took the time and the effort, and it's been a ton of work for you, I know. And they're thanking all of the societies for the work that they put in, but Space Racer and Trovarsi put in inordinate amounts of time to make this happen. So just
Her even more than me. So.
just tremendous amount of thanks to the two of you for everything that you did to make Frequency Shift happen. And support SoCal Synth Society for making events like this happen, because without them, this wouldn't be the thing. And the two of you, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kris.
Yeah, thanks, Kris.
Thank you.
And thanks for always supporting us and, just being right there with us.
Yes.
Always.
Very beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Wow, what an episode. It's been a real honor to have Holly Vernon and the SoCal Synth Society take over for this episode. I want to give a massive shout out to Trovarsi and Space Racer for the enormous amount of work they did putting this whole thing together, and to all of the synth societies that sponsored other episodes of Frequency Shift, and to Beat People podcast for sponsoring episode 2. We're going to put a link to everybody in the description below. Please like and support all of those people for being a part of this. It's a really important thing that everybody's doing. And if you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe to our feed so that you never miss a single Noiseblast. See you next time.